Hey, good morning all. Thanks for dropping by. Happy New Year to everyone. Today I'm doing a cottage with a view with a wee painter standing out on his deck. It is a 6x9 sheet of Arches cold pressed paper, 140 pound, and I'm doing my sketch here with a super hard lead pencil so that it doesn't show through so much when I do my final painting. Now I put a character in here, the painter. He's doing some plein air. I don't know if you've ever done that, but let me tell you, it's not easy. So here we go. I've actually got some clean water for a change, and I'm just wetting the paper in around the horizon. Now sometimes I would flip my board upside down and paint it upside down and let the paint run to the bottom, but in this case I'm just going to leave it in place and paint upwards, if that makes any sense. I'm going with a kind of a sunrise, or just nice morning type look. Of course, if you're looking at it from another direction, maybe you think it's a sunset. Anyway, I was going to put some cobalt blue in at the top and really dress up the sky, but as I got working on this thing, I decided now I'll just leave the cadmium yellow and the cadmium orange in there as the base color, and then fade it up to the top. So I'm just adding more water to the pigment there as I go up to the top of the page. As you can see, I'm painting around the cottage and around the little paint guy. In case you're wondering, that's a mop brush I'm using. No particular reason for using the mop brush other than that it was the closest one to me, and that's why I used it. So yeah, I'm just trying to make the sky somewhat interesting, but not overdoing it. Now I'm just mopping out a bit. Good thing I have the mop brush. I'm just mopping out a bit of the horizon there because I will be putting a hills, mountains, trees in the background. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just putting in some ultramarine. I'm going to do 2 layers of hills. So these are the guys set way back in the distance. So I'm going with an ultramarine, and I'll mop out the bottom of it there to give it some atmosphere. So I'll keep it kind of a light blue look. Now the hills that are closer, hills or trees which are closer, I'm going to drop in a bit of green into the blue because you would see the color from that distance. And this is just giving the painting a little bit of depth, showing some distance, and separating the foreground from the background. Now I wanted to emphasize the hill. Oh, there's my like and subscribe button. So if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. And by the way, to everyone who has already done that, thanks so much. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate the nice comments I've been getting. So thanks again for that. So back to the hill here. Just dabbing out some things. I want the light to be hitting the top of that hill, which is in front of the cottage. So let's say that my light is coming from the right-hand side, and all my shadows will be cast to the left. Now my roof, my rather large roof, I've decided it's going to be a tile roof. It could be any color you want, but the way I'm wired is if it's tile, it's going to be like a terracotta, burnt sienna, clay look. Anyway, so I'm dropping in some cadmium yellow for the base color, just to give it some brightness, and then putting in burnt sienna on top while it's still wet. So I'm putting in a bit of Payne's Gray and a bit of burnt umber in at the bottom of the roof, because that's where all the dirt and everything collects on its way down to my eaves trough. So while that is doing its thing over there on the roof, I'm going to move over and paint the fella's deck here, and that's just a collection of browns and grays and blues. What I'm doing there is I'm just lifting out a few highlights out of the roof. As you can see, I just skipped the film forward there a bit, but I just lifted out a bit of color so that when I do my inking over the top, it just gives it a bit of texture. Now for my chimney, that's going to be an ultramarine, bit of Payne's Gray, a bit of burnt sienna. Again, it's all a wet on wet thing, and I will be inking, so that will, you know, detail out the stones in the fireplace at that point. I also lifted out a bit of color on the blue there too to highlight some of the stones. Now here's where I had some technical difficulties. There you go. I started painting the foreground and a few troubles with my phone. So what I did was I had painted in a nice light color, and then I was marking in some rocks and stones, and that's what you have in the foreground. Just painted out my downspout with the downspout green. And now moving over to these trees. I wanted I'm going to go with green trees this time around. So it's a really wet mix, really dense wet mix of cadmium yellow, and I'm putting sap green in on top. Again, letting them work. I'm not overpainting it, just dropping the colors in and see what comes of it. Now there's my rigger brush. Dropped in some Payne's Gray and a bit of burnt umber, a bit of green. It's kind of cool too, is that when you get up to the wet at the base of the foliage there, how it creates a little bit of shadow. Speaking of shadows, an ultramarine mix. I've got a bit of purple in there too, and a bit of Payne's Gray. As I mentioned, that the light is coming from the right, so all the shadows are going to be cast to the left. And you'll notice that it's not photo real, in that if this was a real setting, I'm sure the shadows wouldn't be cast quite that way. But it's, hey, it's my painting, and I just wanted to dress up the shadows and make them a little more interesting. So that mudroom at the back, I decided to put a little more blue in there and push it, since it's in behind and back, I decided to push it back and make the shadow a bit darker. Now I'm moving over to my main tree. It's the same process as I used for a little guy over on the left. Really rich mixture of cadmium yellow, and I'm using some cadmium orange in there as well. I used cadmium orange in the sky, so I threw it in for the background of the tree. And then once again, just putting in sap green into the wet mixture. There's my rigger brush. My trunk is Payne's Gray, burnt umber, bit of green in there as well. And it's already too dark, so I think, yeah, it's just kind of dominating the picture. And taking away far too much attention from the cottage and the painter. So I'm going in with some water there with my spotter brush and just lifting out a bit of the color, making it nice and wet. And then what I'll do is I'll drop in some burnt sienna just to brighten it up a bit, give it a bit of color, and give the thing a bit of energy as well. A little bit of Davy's Gray for the bucket. Why is there a bucket hanging from her roof? Well, I'll leave that to you. Now I'm using a watercolor pencil here to detail out the deck and the easel. It's a little bit easier to get into it. Just add a drop of water on it and let the color spread a bit, but it's good for detailed areas. For the dormer, I'm putting in some, looks like some raw sienna and some burnt sienna just to put some wear on that wooden part. So I'm just scanning the area here for some last minute details. Of course, I have to put mustard pants on my artist. And then we'll get around to inking this thing. I'm using the Rotring Superfine Point 0.25. I'm not sure what the unit of measure that is, but that's what it is. And I'm using India ink. Pretty simple at this point too. When you paint something first, you just trace around the paint, and it's created some really interesting lines. And it makes you look far more creative than you actually are, which is a good thing. You just tell people I meant to do that. So there we are, easel cleaned up. Clean up the trees a little bit, and we'll just mark in the tiles on the roof. So I'm just adding a few details to the rocks in the foreground. And just cleaning up the last of it. I dropped in a nice olive green shirt on my painter. We'll get this guy signed. Oops, put a pastel pencil there to highlight the rocks. Yeah, so we'll get her signed, get the tape off this thing, and call it a day. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you again soon.